Hello, I'm Trader Daniel, and today I would like to show you an example of how I trade the ES when it's range bound. As I mentioned in previous videos, market context is very important in trading. In particular, based on the context, I decide which ones of my setups I want to look for, because some setups work better on a range-bound market, while some work better on a trending market. Because of that, every day I try to understand what the context is before I start trading. The context, of course, can change, especially after the morning open. And because of that, I'm always on the lookout for signs that the context is changing. Let's go to today's charts to see how I assess market context. This is the ES September contract at 9 a.m. today, July 15, 2026, 5-minute time frame. I have some levels plotted. For example, some are order blocks, some are based on volume profile. But that is not the topic of this video. What this chart is telling me is that ES is range bound at the moment. I will say this is the range. There are strong levels below and above price. At the open, ES could trade within the current range, or we could see a range expansion. For example, the range could expand up to the levels above price, or could expand down to the order block below price and the weekly VWAP. In any case, as long as ES is trading between the main levels that I have on the chart, I will consider ES to be range bound. Based on this context, I select the appropriate setups that I want to focus on. As an example, for today I will only look for the cycle rotation setup that I discussed in a previous video. Here is the information about the cycle rotation setup. The setup is based on my core tool, which displays 4 lines that represents market cycles on different time frames. In particular, the red line represents the fast cycle, meaning the cycle that is taking place on the chart time frame. The black line represents the slow cycle, meaning the cycle that is taking place on the higher time frame. And the green and blue lines represent cycles developing on intermediate time frames. For a sell setup, I want to see the cycles on all 4 time frames extended above the high threshold. And then I want to see the fast cycle line reverting and crossing below the high threshold. For a buy setup, I want to see the opposite. Let's now go back to the charts and look for the cycle rotation setup. We will do so as long as the market is range bound. This is today's ES chart, 1-minute time frame at 9 a.m. Eastern. I'm using the replay function of TradingView to show you how the setups develop. Let's move forward and look for the setups. Okay, the range expanded up after the open at 937. We have a cycle rotation setup sell. As you can see, all the 4 lines went above the high threshold, and now the red line is barely crossing the high threshold, pointing down after the price tested the levels above. At this point, I will enter a sell trade. My stop loss will go above the most recent pivot high, which is also the high of the day. And my take profit will go toward the bottom of the range before the levels at the bottom. And actually, I will put it before these highs of the consolidation area that we had before the open. So let's say take profit goes here. Okay. After reaching target, we have now at 9:53 a.m. a cycle rotation setup long. As you can see, all the lines went below the low threshold, and now the red line, the fast cycle line, crossed above the low threshold. I would enter a buy trade here. My stop loss will go below the most recent pivot low, and my take profit will go toward the high of the range a little bit before to be conservative. Okay, now after reaching the target at 10:19, we have an almost perfect cycle rotation short setup. I say almost perfect because not all the 4 lines are above the threshold before the red line crosses down. In fact, the black line just now got above the threshold. So this is a, say, grade B setup, but considering the fact that we are range bound and that we just tested the high of the range, I will take a short here. As usual, my stop loss goes above the previous pivot high, which is also the high of the day. My take profit goes toward the low of the range, a little bit before the previous major pivot low. And now we will notice that no other setup will be validated for a while. And then the price breaks below the levels at the bottom of the range. That means that ES is not range bound anymore, and because of that, I will look for different setups from now on. In short, understanding market context and trading based on such context is key in order to increase your probability of success. I hope you found this helpful. If you want to learn more about my trading playbook and tools, you can find me at compassfx.com. Thank you for watching.